think Meghan, all she does is just prod him, and he's like a little performing monkey. And
you really feel Harry is a victim, but how?
No.
I mean, this is a guy who has had more privilege than virtually anyone in the Western world, and he wants us to feel sorry for him.
What is a victim? A victim is someone who's put in a situation over which they have no control. Now, Harry had no control over what was printed about him in the press, and we're talking about 8 hours on the stand, and the little instance you've picked out is just one instance over 8 hours. Now, that's not a lot. There was 140 odd articles that he's talking about, and this is a 33 sample cases, as it were. Now, for heaven's sake, you said about Chelsea Davy. Look, everyone's got a past. Everyone's got a first love.
But
no.
He should be just kind of looking into the future and stop going backwards.
He's married, Nina, to the woman who he claims is the love of his life, and yet he seems more unhappy than he's ever been in his life.
America to get away from everything,
He has decided to take on the press, who made his life hell over many, many, many years, and made his mother's life hell over many years.
No, I want to pick you up on the Princess Diana thing, and I'll let you respond. But I think there is a lot of misleading stuff being put out there about Princess Diana. Remember, I adore Princess Diana, but she used the media, Nina, constantly and consistently. And the media were her best mates in a lot of cases.
Some of them. That's how she fought it. That's how she fought it, by giving her own story. He's giving his own story too, and he's perfectly entitled to. He has taken the battle with the tabloids head on. And the thing is,
he's not perfectly entitled to make up claims of phone hacking without evidence.
But he's not making up.
Let's start by being honest. When Lady Victoria Hervey opens her mouth, you know you're not getting commentary. You're getting disdain masquerading as opinion. That day, she directed one of the most ridiculous, insulting statements at Meghan Markle, calling her a little performing monkey. Think about that for a moment. A grown woman, mother, philanthropist, and public figure who has navigated the most relentless media scrutiny imaginable is reduced by Hervey to an image of a tiny circus animal performing for an audience. It's astonishing in its cruelty and in its arrogance. It tells you everything you need to know about Lady Victoria's approach. She doesn't care about facts, context, or even basic human decency. Her goal is not to critique behavior or to analyze decisions. Her goal is to sneer, to assert social superiority, and to provoke outrage for the sake of spectacle. And she does it so transparently that it borders on farcical. Hervey's words reveal less about Meghan and everything about her own entitlement, her snobbery, and her comfort with wielding insult as authority. Then there's Dan Wooten, whose participation in the conversation adds a layer of tabloid melodrama to the proceedings. Wooten has built an entire career on simplification, outrage, and caricature, and he applied that approach here with predictable precision. Instead of engaging with the complexities of public life under intense scrutiny, he reduced Meghan and Harry's actions to a story of perpetual victimhood and manipulation, as if their lives are a stage play, and they are merely actors performing roles for sympathy or attention. Wooten doesn't care about nuance, context, or the fact that public scrutiny in their lives has been relentless, invasive, and often cruel. He thrives on distorting events into sound bites that provoke outrage and sell clicks. When you listen to him, you're not hearing journalism, you're hearing performance. He sneers, he frames, he dramatizes, and in doing so, he contributes nothing to the conversation except spectacle. In this dynamic, Hervey and Wooten become mirrors of each other, one dripping with aristocratic disdain, the other reveling in tabloid provocation, both elevating themselves at the expense of someone else's humanity. And then in the middle of this circus, there is Nina Myskow, the one voice that actually deserves attention, the one voice that demonstrates what intelligent critique looks like. Unlike Hervey, she does not resort to cruel metaphors or simplistic labels. Unlike Wooten, she does not reduce real lived experiences to a melodramatic narrative designed to shock and provoke. Instead, Myskow delivers critique that is grounded, precise, and fearless. She points out that while Meghan is unquestionably a target of relentless public scrutiny, there is a pattern in how the experiences of both Harry and Meghan are presented to the world. She highlights the uncomfortable reality that public figures, even those who have suffered extraordinary invasions of privacy and misrepresentation, still make choices about how they frame and communicate their stories. This is the kind of critique that demands thought because it is neither cruel nor sensationalized, it is analytical. Myskow is essentially saying, we cannot ignore the fact that these narratives exist, and we cannot pretend that the way people present their experiences has no impact. That is an observation, not an attack. It is worth pausing here to consider the broader context of why Myskow's intervention matters so much. The press has long treated Meghan and Harry as either villains or victims, rarely acknowledging the nuance of their experiences. Every statement, every gesture, and every choice is dissected, judged, and sensationalized, creating an environment in which meaningful conversation is nearly impossible. In this toxic mix, Hervey and Wooten are the loudest voices, dominating attention with cruelty and caricature. Yet Myskow cuts through that noise. She refuses to participate in name-calling or performative outrage. She forces the audience to consider something uncomfortable. Meghan, like Harry, is navigating a world where her every word and action is scrutinized, amplified, and often distorted. And in responding to that environment, she has made choices about how to present herself, choices that may sometimes appear performative to outsiders. Myskow doesn't use that as a stick to beat her with. She presents it as an observation worthy of reflection. That's the difference between a commentator who understands nuance and two who do not. The response to this conversation is telling. Social media erupted, not at Myskow, whose critique was sharp, measured, and fair, but at Hervey, whose insult became a viral punchline. This is the way media discourse works. The cruel, simplistic remarks get amplified, while the thoughtful, uncomfortable observations get buried. Yet, if you look closely, it's Myskow whose words actually hold up under scrutiny. She doesn't insult. She doesn't distort. She doesn't pander to outrage. She critiques patterns, asks difficult questions, and forces audiences to reflect. And that is exactly what intelligent commentary should do. It challenges the comfortable assumptions of the audience and exposes the shallow theatrics of those who would rather mock than analyze. What makes this discussion so compelling, and honestly why defending Myskow is essential, is that it draws a clear line between critique and cruelty. Hervey's words are cruelty masquerading as critique, a lazy insult that contributes nothing of value. Wooten's approach is cruelty in melodramatic form, a narrative designed for spectacle rather than understanding. Myskow's critique, by contrast, is grounded in reason, observation, and accountability. She challenges assumptions, she provokes reflection, she unsettles both audience and subject, but in a way that is meaningful, deliberate, and necessary. That is commentary with integrity, and in a media landscape dominated by shallow outrage, it is rare, valuable, and worth defending. And this goes far beyond Meghan or Harry as individuals. It reveals a pattern in how the press treats public figures, particularly those who challenge traditional expectations or navigate their lives under extraordinary scrutiny. It exposes the intersections of privilege, class, and spectacle in commentary, showing how people like Hervey and Wooten can dominate discourse with arrogance and performance while thoughtful voices like Myskow are often drowned out. Yet Myskow's courage in speaking clearly and critically reminds us that meaningful reflection is still possible. She refuses to shy away from uncomfortable truths and demonstrates that accountability does not require cruelty. And let's be clear, defending Nina Myskow is not about agreeing with every word she says. It is about defending the principle that public figures can and should be critiqued in a way that is thoughtful, measured, and substantive. Myskow's critique cuts deeper than any insult Hervey could throw, deeper than any melodrama Wooten could manufacture, because it engages with reality, patterns, and consequences rather than caricature. She highlights what is often ignored. The choices that public figures make in presenting themselves to the world matter, and examining those choices is not an attack. It is responsible commentary. At the end of the day, the lesson is unmistakable. There is a profound difference between criticism that challenges and cruelty that attacks. Wooten and Hervey provide the kind of commentary that panders to outrage, simplifies, and insults, and their impact is often more about self-aggrandizement than insight. Myskow, by contrast, delivers critique with clarity, substance, and courage. Her observations are uncomfortable, yes, but they force audiences to think critically about the narratives they consume and the people behind them. In defending Nina Myskow, we defend the idea that discourse can rise above insult and spectacle. We defend reasoned, fearless, and meaningful analysis in a world increasingly dominated by caricature and outrage. And in doing so, we acknowledge that true critique doesn't humiliate. It illuminates, it challenges, and it provokes thought in ways that matter.